Right, so there's been some interesting recent studies on MRI scans, and again, it leads more into the structural kind of elements not being as significant or relevant or more confusing than would meet the eye, and therefore pain isn't necessarily always as clear as what an MRI shows, or the MRI being accurate in showing what you think it shows. So the first one was they took a lady who had chronic back pain. It was stable chronic back pain, and over a three-week period they sent it to 10 different hospitals. She had 10 different MRI scans, was 10 different reports written by 10 different radiologists, and they found basically 49 different diagnoses. What was interesting though as well, other than the fact that this creates a big needle in a haystack, and therefore which one is causing her pain, if any, is that there was no one condition out of them which crossed all 10. So what this means is there wasn't even like a consensus opinion across the entire range, which means that there was huge disagreement by experts in the area. So this could be a problem with the MRI, or it could be a problem with the reading of the MRI and the reporting on the MRI. And it just again highlights that there's not necessarily as much clarity gained from that MRI. If you had that MRI scan or 10 MRI scans, you would now be none the wiser. You'd be actually more confused than you started. Whereas if you just do orthopedic assessment, listen to the patient, listen to the symptoms, see what the patterns are, see what responds to, what doesn't respond to, you'd have a much more accurate depiction of what was going on. So that was that study. The next study was done, and this was on the knee. And what they looked at was a load of people who had knee pain and a load of people who didn't have knee pain. And what they found is that, because they MRI'd both groups, they found that they were looking for severity of conditions found on each side. Now, what you might assume is that you're going to find conditions found on the painful side and nothing found on the non-painful side. If you're more skeptical, you might have found that there is more severe injuries found on the painful side and less severe injuries found on the non-painful side. However, they didn't find any of this. They found that the injuries were the same on both sides, to the same severities on both sides, as in on both groups. And what was even stranger, but I think this might have been a blip of an anomaly, they found meniscal lesions, which is like cartilage tear in the knee, was actually more severe in the pain-free group than the painful group. But either way, if that was an anomaly, they would be the same. So that means that whether or not you've got structural injuries in your knee shown on an MRI, or you haven't, or you have but you've got no pain, pain itself is not driven by whether or not you've got the structural problems or not, because clearly you can have the same level of injuries with no pain, or the same level of injuries with pain. So therefore it's not about the structures, it's about what exposes the structures. Is it physical demand on that structure? Is it lifestyle? Is it exercise? Is it strength? Is it flexibility? Is it stress? Is it anxiety? Is it depression? All these things factor into pain levels, pain thresholds, or overloading on what's wrong with you. So that was that study. The next one, another interesting one, this time they looked at individuals who had one-sided shoulder pain, and then once again they MRI'd both sides. They MRI'd the bad side and they MRI'd the good side. And I found this quite funny, because I see patients all the time, they come in, they'll say, oh, I've had a bad knee and I went to see the GP and they sent me for an x-ray, and they x-rayed the knee and found that I had arthritis in the knee. So I'll say, well, how much arthritis, what level, what grade? And they don't know. And then the next one is, I always say, did they do the other side? And the answer is always no. So I'm like, well, where's the baseline to compare against? So this was funny, because they actually did do this in this research. So again, what you would think is, are you going to find, loads of severity of injury on the bad side, and on the good side it's going to look normal? If you're more skeptical again, are you going to find that the bad side has got more severe problems and the other side less severe problems? Well, this wasn't quite as categorical as the knee study, but they did find that across all bar two conditions, both sides, the good and the bad side, were the same levels of severity of injuries found. The only two conditions that were worse were only 10% approximately worse, and that was a full thickness rotator cuff tear and glenohumeral joint osteoarthritis, which is arthritis of the shoulder joint. So again, it shows that apart from more severe, like the full thickness rotator cuff tear, there's not a lot of difference between painful sides and non-painful sides in the same individuals. So again, the structure doesn't always equate to causing pain. So again, a lot of these studies are kind of showing that it's not as simple as just scan it and you'll know what's wrong. Scan it, it'll give you the solution. Scan it, it'll give you the cause, so you know how to get to the root cause and solve the problem. It doesn't do any of that. So I'm not saying MRIs are useless, they aren't, but they are not always as useful as you think, and you've got to be very cautious on using them on their own in isolation. You need to, if you're going to use them in combination with an orthopedic assessment, with an assessment of subjective and objective factors, and see what makes sense, and then see if that makes sense with it. So anyway, that's it for this one, and I'll see you next time.